You could never prove you're sane. Think about that for a moment. If someone locked you in a psychiatric hospital tomorrow and insisted you were mentally ill, what could you possibly say to change their mind? Protest that you're fine? That is exactly what a delusional person would say. Stay calm and cooperative? That is you suppressing your symptoms. The harder you try to prove your sanity, the more you seem to confirm your illness. There is no way out of that logic. And in 1973, one psychologist decided to walk straight into it on purpose. His name was David Rosenhan, a psychologist at Stanford University. He had a question that sounds simple, but is quietly terrifying. Can the experts actually tell the difference between a person who is mentally ill and a person who is perfectly healthy? Or does the label do all the work? To find the answer, he recruited 8 ordinary sane people: a graduate student, a pediatrician, a painter, a housewife, 3 psychologists, and Rosenhan himself. None of them had any history of serious mental illness. All of them were about to disappear into the system. The plan was almost absurdly simple. Each of the 8 would arrive at a psychiatric hospital and report one single symptom, the same for everyone. They said they heard a voice. It was unfamiliar, and it spoke just 3 words: empty, hollow, thud. That was all. No other complaints. They gave false names and false jobs, but everything else about them, their life stories, their families, their real feelings, they told the truth. They spread out across 12 hospitals in 5 different states, from crumbling public wards to one comfortable private clinic. And then something chilling happened. Every single one of them was admitted. Not one was sent home. 7 were diagnosed with schizophrenia, one of the heaviest labels in all of psychiatry. The 8th was diagnosed as manic depressive. The doors closed behind 8 healthy people, and the word insane was now written into their files. Here is where the real experiment began. The moment they were inside, all 8 stopped pretending. They behaved completely normally. They were polite. They spoke calmly with the staff. They said the voice was gone. They simply wanted to leave. And this is the part that should keep you awake at night. Acting sane did not help them. Because once you are labeled insane, everything you do is read through that label. Rosenhan and the others took notes constantly, quietly documenting life on the ward. In one medical record, a nurse wrote, "Patient engages in writing behavior." Writing, an utterly ordinary act, had been logged as a symptom. One man paced the corridor out of sheer boredom and was recorded as nervous. A patient who lined up early for lunch was described as showing oral acquisitive syndrome. Every normal human behavior was being calmly rewritten as evidence of a sick mind. Their sanity had become invisible to the very professionals trained to see it. And life inside the ward stripped away something deeper than freedom. The staff spent most of the day sealed inside a glass-walled office the patients bitterly nicknamed the cage, stepping out only in brief bursts. Psychiatrists averaged just a few minutes of real contact with each person a day. The pseudopatients were handed pills, thousands of them over the course of the study, which they quietly slipped into their pockets or dropped into the toilet, where they often found the tablets of real patients already floating, flushed away in exactly the same act of silent refusal. They watched staff discuss them by name, out loud, as if they were pieces of furniture. They were ignored when they asked simple questions. They were looked straight through. Sane or not, the ward taught all 8 the same quiet lesson. Inside those walls, you slowly stop being a person and start being a diagnosis. But it was not invisible to everyone. Again and again, it was the other patients, the real ones, the genuinely ill, who saw through the disguise. "You're not crazy," one of them said. "You're a journalist or a professor." You're checking up on the hospital. The people society had written off as mad could tell exactly who was faking. The doctors could not. So how do you escape a place that reinterprets your every move as illness? You do not argue. You cannot. The 8 learned the only route out. Agree that you are sick. Agree that the medication is helping, and wait. On average, it took 19 days. For one man, it took 52. And when they were finally released, not one of them was called healthy or cured or sane. The official discharge said, schizophrenia in remission. In other words, you still have it. You are simply quiet for now. The label walks out the door with you. When Rosenhan published his results in the journal Science under the title On Being Sane in Insane Places, it went off like a bomb. If 8 sane people could walk into 12 hospitals and every doctor got it wrong, then what did a psychiatric diagnosis actually mean? One hospital was so insulted that it issued a challenge: send us more fakes, and this time we will catch them. Over the following weeks, that hospital's staff proudly identified 41 out of 193 new patients as suspected imposters. There was only one problem. Rosenhan had not sent a single one. Every person they accused of faking was a real patient who had come for help. The damage was already done. Rosenhan's study became one of the most cited experiments in the history of psychology. It helped shatter public faith in psychiatric diagnosis. It fed the movement to empty the asylums, and it pushed the entire profession to throw out its diagnostic manual and rebuild it from the ground up. For 50 years, this was the study that proved the experts could not tell the sane from the insane. It was in every textbook. It was settled science, and then, half a century later, a journalist decided to check. Her name is Susannah Cahalan. She had every reason to be on Rosenhan's side. Years earlier, she had been misdiagnosed as mentally ill, when her real illness was physical, in her brain, so she came to his story as a believer. She wanted to celebrate him. Instead, the deeper she dug, the more the whole thing began to come apart in her hands. She found Rosenhan's own hospital admission record, the account of his own performance as a fake patient, and it did not match his paper. In print, he claimed he had reported only those 3 harmless words. In reality, his record showed he had told the doctors far more, that the voice was deeply distressing, that he had put copper over his ears to try to block it out, that he could barely cope. He had exaggerated badly. The very symptom his study insisted was trivial. His own admission may have been completely reasonable. It got worse. Of the 8 pseudopatients, Cahalan could only ever confirm that 2 of them truly existed, Rosenhan and one other man. The rest left almost no trace at all. And then she found a 9th volunteer, a man named Harry Lando, who really had gone through the experiment and whose experience was positive. He found the hospital helpful, even healing. But his story did not fit the one Rosenhan wanted to tell. So Rosenhan simply left him out of the data. So here is the unsettling place this leaves us. The experiment that told the world psychiatry could not tell the sane from the insane, the study that emptied hospitals and rewrote the rulebook, may itself have been exaggerated, cherry-picked, and in part, possibly invented. The great exposer of psychiatric fiction may have been quietly writing fiction of his own. And yet that does not make the nightmare disappear. Because whether or not Rosenhan told the whole truth, the trap he described is still real. Labels still stick. Institutions still read your behavior through whatever box they have already placed you in. And if the world ever decided that you did not belong on the outside, you would still be handed the same impossible task he gave to 8 ordinary people in 1973. You could never prove you're sane